Hey guys, what's going on? It's Brian coming to you from the TST Industries garage. Today I have a 2019 Honda CRF450L sitting next to me. In my hands I have our brand new integrated taillight, so you're going to pull these signals from the outside. We brought them in all on one board. This is going to fit on the 450L, both Honda Groms and the Honda Monkey, as well as even a couple other bikes of theirs. I believe the CTX 700 and the Super Cub. Kind of just some odd models there. We'll get around to installing them eventually, but our main flagship models are the 450L, the Monkey, and the Groms. The install is pretty straightforward. A couple of things to consider. You'll see that we already have our TST fender eliminator on here. That will kind of play into the installation, but we'll get into that. I did just want to touch on one other thing. Being that this is a programmable taillight, it has those 9 programmable states, a lot of different options in there for your signals, your flasher mode of your brake. There is this program button on the back here. Now that is something that we'll have to plug the taillight into the bike before we install it completely and just go through and select our mode. Once you actually install your taillight, you do lose that availability of getting to that button, so we will want to make sure that we've picked a mode that we like before we finish the installation. It's pretty straightforward, guys. Let's jump right in. All right, guys, so our very first step is actually going to be with the taillight off the bike. We do want to install this strip of foam here. That is going to be a weather seal. The OEM unit will have it. You'll see it when we pull that out. We did include that, but we haven't installed it for you guys. So you're going to want to go ahead and peel back the backing on the foam ever so slightly. You can just get it started. If your taillight's a little dusty for some reason, go ahead and wipe it off. You want a good seal on this. And you'll see here on the taillight, there's a little screw boss in the very, very center on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start just about a millimeter or so away from the one side of it. If you're gonna wrap from right to left, you'd want to start on the left side of it. So as we do that, we want to line this foam up with that edge of the bucket. So we'll actually kind of help you along the way. Want to make sure you're not up on top of it. Just peel back that backing as you go, making sure that we're staying nice and parallel with that back of that taillight there. Keep pulling away, press down as we go. Another little section. I'm gonna peel back more here and place this large section as a whole. And then when we come back around, we should have this nice little gap right in the center, or almost perfectly centered. So that's gonna be a nice little channel for any water that possibly gets past the taillight to eventually make its way out. You'll see that the OEM unit uses a similar setup there. So the only other thing that we're gonna wanna do now is take our supplied sub-harness. We're just gonna wanna make sure that the lock features are meeting up with each other. Just go ahead and plug that in. Should get a little pop. If not, just make sure it's not gonna come loose. That little lock feature engages silently sometimes, as it just did on mine. So that is our taillight ready to go on. Let's go ahead and start taking some stuff off the bike so that we could get this in there. All right, so to begin this process, we're gonna take off our OEM seat. So that's gonna be a 10mm socket. Once we have those bolts off, we can go ahead and take our seat. You're gonna wanna lift up slightly and push forward. That clip can be a little hard to get out sometimes. There we are. So this little clip slides into the accepting feature on the tank there. You'll just want to make sure that you get that out. We want to grab a Phillips head screwdriver, remove the 2 screws in the back of the tail shroud. All right, so keeping those screws in a safe location, you want to go ahead and take the fairings in front of this tail shroud, kind of spread them apart, and as you're doing that, you're going to want to try to lift up off these bosses and then slide this fairing forward. There's a little clip in the back that will release. Once that does, go ahead and lift up, pull out. So this little clip kind of slides in underneath where the taillight mounts. You'll just want to make sure that you slide forward, disengage that, and then lift up and out. At this point, while we're in this region, we're going to go ahead and take off our signals and our connectors. So we'll start with the connectors. Take these little housing boots off of where they slide onto. Expose the plug and its locking features. Just lift up on those locks with a little flathead. As you lift up, just pull the connector out. Same story on the taillight and license plate light. You'll see we only have our taillight plug right now. The license plate light has been removed when the OEM fender was removed. All right, so with those out, we can go ahead and actually remove our signals. Now this is a little bit tricky, but there's these little backing plates to them. And if you get your flathead up underneath them, you can start to pry out. There's these little rubber tabs that you'll want to try to disengage while you're lifting up on it. But eventually, you'll get it to release, and your signal will be able to be extracted. There we are. So I like to work from the back to the front. That little front portion kind of clicks in there. So with that out, you can go ahead and just pop your signal out like so. We'll repeat the process on the other side. So there's that little locking ring again, and then just down and out. All right, so with our signals off, we're gonna wanna go ahead and remove this taillight shroud here. So what we're gonna do there is, because we have our TST fender eliminator on, we have to move our plate out of the way. I left that a little loose. And then there's one screw underneath. I'm gonna wanna take that out. Set it off to the side. And then that will allow us to take these two tabs on the top, press down on them and out. The tolerance is a little tight, so sometimes they can be a little tricky. Once you've got those two tabs out, you can go ahead and squeeze the sides, and you release that little lower mounting feature. So set that off to the side. We will want that again. We are now going to take a 10mm box wrench. I'm going to take the taillight off. So off of those stems, you're going to get a dome nut and a washer. Keep that washer handy. We're going to reuse it in a minute. So once the fasteners are off and the washers are secured, go ahead and just pull the taillight out, navigate the connector out so that you're not taking any crimps out of the plug, and go ahead and set this off in your spares box. All right, so with our OEM taillight out, we have opened up our signal working area a little bit more. So we're going to install our optional TST Industries signal block-off kit. So that is going to come with these pod signal mounting adapters, and then this closeout bolt here, which is going to be a countersunk washer. You can choose a color on that. Red obviously matched the Honda here, but we're going to go ahead and take this hardware, just these two plates. You'll have four. I've already installed the one here. We're not going to use this washer, so you could set that off to the side. You're going to want to take the nut off of that countersunk screw, take the washer as well, and then we're going to take that countersunk washer and sink it through the A plate on the inside. So you'll see an A plate and a B plate. You should have two A's, two B's, and again, two of those washers that we set to the side. So we're gonna go into the A plate, take the B plate, catch it on the other side. We're actually gonna go dome in and dome in again. And then we're gonna throw our washer on and our nylock nut. Then we're gonna take an M3 Allen key, get that threaded a little bit more. And then once we hit that nylock component, we're gonna grab an 8mm box wrench. And you will see there's a good bit of adjustability, tolerance in there, so you can kind of get it to an area that you like it. I like to have my washer towards the front, but make sure that the plate is centered really well. So go ahead and just tighten that down, engage that nylock feature a little bit, but you don't want to obviously over torque these. They are just plastic components. You just need a little bit of preload and make sure that your screw is starting to touch those nylock components. So at this point, we can go ahead and grab our TST Industries TLH12. And here's what I was talking about in that intro for you guys. So If you wanted to go ahead and install it, you could go through with that right now. I want to actually plug in the taillight before I get the install going. So I'm gonna actually route my wires through that OEM hole there. And then just kind of place my taillight in the accepting features. I'm gonna plug it into the correct plugs. So the taillight 3 position goes back into the taillight. And then we're gonna go brown to orange and green to blue to get our signals in the right direction. At this point, I'm gonna go ahead and turn the bike on. I wanna make sure that everything works, so I'm gonna signal. Left is left, right is right. We do have brake functionality, but at this point, if we were going to finish up the installation, you would be blocking yourself off from that button permanently and you would not be able to change your modes. So you could go ahead and remove that taillight since we didn't put screws in it. You can go ahead and locate that button on the back, press it to change your mode, press the brake, check the signal. You can see we're now in strobe signal. I'm gonna get to the signal that I like, which is actually the scrolling one. So we have that there, and then strobe brake. So I'm gonna keep going, pick one that I like a little bit more. So standard brake and the scrolling signal. Let's leave it there. That one makes me happy. And we can continue this installation. So our next step is going to be to actually take some of the parts off of our TST Industries fender eliminator, let this subtray droop a little bit just so we could get a really nice angle to get the screws into the back of this taillight. All right, so like I said, we're gonna allow this subtray area to droop a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my TST Industries fender eliminator. I'm actually gonna remove that. So just these 2 screws on the top here. We'll remove those bosses. You'll see I have my fender eliminator in hand. Now, if you have the OEM, you're gonna have those 4 bolts on the underside. If you watched our install video for this fender eliminator, you'll know what I'm talking about. But if you do have that OEM, they're just gonna be 10mm socket heads on the bottom. We do still have to remove 2 of those. So we're gonna take that 10mm. I like to do them a little bit at a time, and you can actually even leave those in at this point. You don't have to take them all the way out, but just enough to where that subtray kind of moves around on you a little bit. So once we get to that point, we can go ahead and grab our TST hardware. And by that, I mean the 2 screws that are going to go into the back of the taillight. These are plastite screws, so they're going to thread on in themselves. And then we're going to grab those OEM washers that came off of the OEM taillight. So we're going to throw our screw down in. And while supporting our taillight, go ahead and thread that in to the boss on the back of the taillight. You can get them hand started just to get those first couple of threads to catch, but you won't get too much further than that. To make it a little bit easier on yourself, you may want to install these screws beforehand just to give them their own channel. They do cut threads as they go in. The bosses are not threaded. We're threading them as we install the screws. So those will hit a point that you can't turn them by hand at all anymore. So we're gonna, at that point, take our screwdriver, just kind of navigate down in. You can flex the taillight down ever so slightly, being that it's in rubber grommets. As you're doing that, go ahead and turn in that screw. I like to do them both kind of evenly before I bottom them both out. The angle can be a little tricky with your screwdriver, but I'm able to make it work. There we go. You see that those grommets start to tighten down a little bit. Just taking my time on these. Since I don't have a perfect angle for my screwdriver, I don't want to skip that Phillips head and possibly strip it out. See there. And there we have it. So at this point, we can go ahead and tighten those screws back up, put our fender eliminator back on, kind of secure this whole subtray region as a whole. All right. And since we just left these fasteners up in here, we're just gonna locate these bosses back to them. Make sure everything is secured down. We can go ahead and now kind of wrap our taillight wires in a way that makes them happy. Just a little loop I like to do just so that they're not hanging about. And then we can actually relocate these housing connectors, or these connector housings rather, back onto those little plastic tabs that are in there that kind of just keep them tidy. So we can go ahead and take our taillight shroud at this point. We're going to navigate that the same way that it came out. So we're going to go on. There's these little accepting features. You want to make sure that those lock inside. All of this actually goes inside besides the one tab that's going to stay on the outside for the screw. So we're going to want to slide over the taillight, over the foam, locate these top two first. So get those to click in, and then make sure all of our tabs are in the right places. You'll feel that that little screw accepting feature kind of locks into place there. Move our plate out of the way and reinstall our screw. Move our plate back. You'll want to secure that down. At this point, we could go ahead and take that little flap that covers our electronics, throw that back on, and the rest is just reassembly, guys. All right, guys, so we installed the taillight. We do just want to do one last safety check. So we're going to check left signal. We're going to check right signal and check that brake light. That is firing. So this installation is complete. It went smoothly. Not too many hiccups to run into during this process. A couple of tricky things like when you have to pull the whole sub tray down to get the right angle on the screws, but that's about it really. I love the way that this taillight accents this entire bike. I think it makes it a very modernized design. I really love the way that these ribs stay running, even though the brake light and signals are on. These block-off kits for the signals look awesome. They really tie it all together with that little red countersunk washer. And of course, our TST Industries fender eliminator complements everything on the rear of this bike so well. Now, if you did notice, we didn't run into a hyperflash during this video. That is because we went ahead and installed our TST Industries flasher relay. Typically, if you pulled off those OEM signals, you would have experienced that hyperflash. We went ahead and threw that in there so that we didn't have to deal with that during this video. If you want one of those on your bike, go to our website at tstindustries.com, follow the links, grab that flasher relay, grab this taillight, or any other parts that you saw on this bike. So definitely be sure to check out our YouTube channel if you liked this installation video or just want to see people installing stuff on bikes. We have got plenty. It's been Brian at TST Industries. I'll catch you guys next time.